Hey, what's going on, Chris?
How are y'all?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I've seen some of y'all's videos. It's y'all are bringing on some great guests.
I want to kind of just get into your backstory for people who don't know about you or don't know about where you've been and how you came to be where you are right now. That's going to really serve a purpose for people who are listening tonight so they can understand what you're going to talk about later on in the show.
Sure. I mean, I've got a pretty broad background in entrepreneurship and entertainment, but I will say in the early 2010s, 2012 is when I made a commitment to pursue that as a full-time career. And what it lent way to and the doors that opened up and the people that I've gotten to meet and the opportunities I've had have kind of pulled the veil back on how that industry operates in some very seedy, shady, and I would say evil manners and ways. And in being around that, it's only furthered my convictions on what the world is and our role in it and what's going on right now. And so I've been pretty vocal about those things in the last few years as we are all aware of what's taken place in the world in a very short but drastic amount of time. So, yeah.
So, if you don't mind, I'd like to get a little bit into, you said you got involved around 2010, 2012. I know that you did everything from commercials, you have a sitcom. You're more than just an actor. You're an entrepreneur. You're doing a little pyramid scheme thing going on. But what got you started? What made you make this your full-time job?
You know, I had been, people that know me, I've been on the stage and in front of the people in the camera my entire life. So it was very much second nature for me. And it wasn't until I had been working in corporate America with an old mentor's franchises and company and realized that I've got a lot of time to go be miserable for a buck. So why not give this a shot? And I was young enough and idealistic enough and naive enough to believe my own ambitions. And so I went for it. And that's where the fun began.
So you've been doing this almost 10 years now. That's exciting. Especially, I don't know, I'm a California girl. I was born and raised in California.
Okay.
You're also in California, right, Gian?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. But being a Cali girl, I never had that itch. You know, so many people are like, I'm going to do acting. It's mostly people from out of state. Like, I know you're from Tennessee. That must have been quite an adjustment for you coming out this way and doing the whole Hollywood thing. The past 10 years, how has it been in Hollywood?
Well, I've been back and forth. I was there for a solid year and then went back and forth almost every year for the past 10 years until COVID hit. There is a very unique atmosphere about that city, I'll start with, that most people are unaware of. Again, for those who want to kind of pull back what's really going on in my brain and spiritual life, I very much believe that all of this is connected from the ground that we walk on to the history that we're unaware of. I think it all matters. There's purpose behind it. And so even if you go into the context of Hollywood, and I won't go too astray here, but most people have no idea that Hollywood was actually co-opted by the CIA in 1953. And so there's obviously an intermarrying of power structures for a great reason. Not only that, if you actually just take the name Hollywood and from a context reference, Hollywood was the type of wood that witches would use to carve their wands out of. And so you get the casting of spells. And then if you go even deeper, I don't think it was Alan Dulles, the founder of the CIA. I can't remember their name. I think it was actually, the founder of modern psychology. It'll come to me. But what they found out when it comes to the mind and people and control, long story short, they said that the television was the greatest weapon they ever invented. And so if you even just break it down, almost from the subtle nuance of how they tell us everything, to tell a vision, television programming. And so all of this is connected. And so I bring that up because being in that city, living there, there is an allure and a luster about it, but it's not so much that it's the glitz and the glam. There's a spiritual element to it, because I'm not sure how familiar people are with ley lines around the world, and how they're talked about in scripture. They're talked about in the 23 other subcultures that existed prior in this world. And when you get even deeper into humanity and our makeup and our being and who we are celestially, everything comes back to blood. Everything comes back to our DNA. And whether people want to go into the deep, deep history of the evil that's taken place in this country, from what we did to the Native Americans and the blood ties that's connected to that on the land across this country, people have no idea what we're bound to. And that city of Los Angeles is rooted, what I'm getting at here, in some very, very, very deep magic. And not the kind of fairy wands that, you know, Disney paints. It's some pretty heavy shit. So that's the baseline of how I view that city. There's a dominion over it, and not only that, there's a air about it to where, I mean, think about it logically, just rational. Pull yourself back for a minute and look at the culture of the people. It's almost like everyone becomes the same version of everything else out there. There's something odd about that. Not only that, but it's a very, very fickle town, and it's very, very easy to manipulate and to push people into positions where their core values. I mean, that's what's strange to me, is watching people that I've known go out there and lose themselves. It's not uncommon. And so when I think of that city, it's more than just the glitz and the glam, which is very few and far between. If you've ever been there, it's actually pretty gross. But I don't think that city, again, in the words of Mel Gibson, it's Hollywood's built on the blood of children. And I believe that. So there's nothing good I've got to say about it, outside of a very small select group of people that I think are some of the good ones.
Yeah, that's a good segue into my next question, because we have a lot of people who look up to these people that are put in front of us and portrayed as these noble people, like someone like Tom Hanks. He's someone who's put out there like he's just this nice guy, but of course when you start to uncover a lot of stuff and you follow the white rabbit, so to speak, you find out some things that link, and you go, okay, this isn't everything that we thought it was. You start to look at these people a little bit differently when you start to connect some dots. And so my question for you is, how much or how many of these actors, producers, you know, rappers and artists and all this stuff are legitimately involved in what a lot of people are claiming that they are involved in?
So I would say that there needs to be an understanding of the levels, I guess, of complicity that's involved. Not everyone, one, because of bloodlines, and then two, because of heirloom and legacy and family that exists in what rules Hollywood. It's not so much that everyone's involved, it's that everyone stays quiet about it. And so it is one big club, and there's certain aspects to it to where, I mean, just take Harvey Weinstein, for example. Now, granted, you had MCs making jokes about the things we've now found out, and that's what the public's allowed to know. What was really happening with this man and the people that he's associated with. that's something that I believe very, very soon is about to come out. I believe that we're on the precipice of waves of disclosure. You're seeing it every day. I mean, at this point, it's not coincidence that 6 major entertainers have tried to speak out in some form of art, using that as their vehicle to subvertly tell the world about these crimes against children, these crimes against humanity, and they're all dead. I find that beyond coincidence. And so there is a level of complicity, and that's why you get the covering of the eyes. You even see this. This is my favorite part for Christians, and I'm not knocking on them, but they have no idea the music that they're listening to, the same spells have been cast on that as well. It's all owned by the same groups and the same people. And music is one of the most powerful weapons as well that exists, and I know that you're aware of that. But I don't think everyone's necessarily involved. There is a certain echelon and tier that you're bound for it. I've also learned that it's very, very rare that an outsider makes it in. And what I mean by that is it all comes back to bloodlines. And we have to go all the way back to the garden. And this is where people get lost. This is where they're going to have to come out of their religion and come out of, I guess, their baseline. Whether people want to believe in this story or not, it has context for what's happening today. In the fact that everything goes back to our image and our makeup and our DNA. And you hear conservatives say it, and I think it's funny because their context of it is a weak argument. There's a war on God. But in reality, it's the truth. There's an actual war on God. And so when I say bloodlines and the complicity that's in Hollywood, this goes very, very far back and far reaching, and you'd have to understand the context of the gods of that time, your Ra, your Amun, your Baal, your Moloch. And so with that, when I say bloodlines, this goes all the way back to that lineage and the Baphomet. And if you study the Baphomet and the teachings of Aleister Crowley and the Church of Satan, everything is about inversion. And think about it, God's not a God of confusion. So how would you go about dictating your principles and laws as the ruler of the power of the air, which is earth? You would create confusion. And so up is down, left is right, black is white, good is evil. And so, again, most people have no idea that some of the highest held esteemed individuals in this world are some very, very evil people. One thing that I have learned, and again, this has to do with blood, this has to do with the tampering of our DNA. I'm sorry, folks, but Eve didn't just eat an apple and God said, "Peace out, bitch." There was some deep happenings there, and it comes back to bloodlines. And everyone that you see that is of relevance in the space of tech, business, government, politics, nonprofit, Hollywood, they're all related. And I'll tell you this much, not all of their blood is the same as ours. And so it is subverting the masses through inversion and through trickery and through lies. I'll tell you this much, the transgender, I don't even know what we call it, reality movement happening. It's nothing new at all. It is just a part of this segue in this massive plan to move things forward. And so that's not all of them are involved in the cryptic, most evil parts of this, but they're all complicit for the most part.
I find it so interesting that you said basically if you're in and it's really hard to get in, because I was actually doing a little bit of research before coming on, so we were going to be talking about Hollywood. And I found it so interesting, like how everything is so interconnected, like all the pedophiles, all the people up on top. For example, you brought up Harvey Weinstein. The journalist who exposed him was Ronan Farrow, who happens to be the brother of Rowan Farrow, who was molested by Woody Allen. Now, their mother was in Rosemary's Baby, who was produced by Roman Polanski. So these three people are some of the biggest pedophiles in Hollywood, and they're all connected together. So I found that so interesting that you're like, yeah, if you're, yes, everyone is complicit, but there are certain entities, I guess, who are at the very top, and we saw it again with Epstein. The people that were on his flight list, like you said, it goes to tech, it's politics, it's basically some of the people that have the biggest influence in our society.
Yep. And I don't know everything about Jeffrey Epstein. I know a lot. My conclusions personally on who he was and what he was doing, I believe that he was working for the Mossad. I don't believe in the character that they've created for him just because it's too deep, and there's too much of him everywhere, which tells me that there's something they're not telling us. And so from everything I've read, the man's still alive and his role in all of this is significant. I don't think we know who he really is yet. I'm excited to find out, for better or for worse. But I don't know if that answers.
It wasn't a question. I just found it very interesting how you were saying that. And just the little research I was doing before coming on, I found out everything was so interconnected.
They're all, it's wild. It's wild how connected they are. I mean, even just look at Gucci and Balenciaga. I mean, this at its core is in every single facet of our society.
Yeah, the whole Balenciaga thing, it's so, I think you see a lot of manipulation that's happening there with the big names. For example, you have the whole Kanye West dilemma, and then you see the Balenciaga one, where Kanye just said the wrong thing and everyone cut him off, but these people are blatantly showing children in explicit images, and then the more you look into it, the worse it gets, and no one is really, well, they'll be like, it looks bad. Like, what did Kim say? She goes, I wanted to hear what they had to say, but meanwhile, her baby daddy, she literally came out and her and her sister made a whole statement about it, but they refused to do this with these big corporations, and you see the manipulation happening. I think, like you said, we're on the precipice of something happening now, and so many people are waking up.
I've never been more encouraged, and as someone who's been studying the world and how it operates and what's really going on since I was a kid, I've had spiritual experiences and happenings since I was 5 years old. To see what's transpired in the last few months has been very hopeful, because we all know the world has been in quite a purgatory for the last, I would say, 3 years. It's almost as if it's a different version of Groundhog's Day as we wait for that thing to tip. And I believe that we're getting very close to things tipping. Not only that, it's not just people waking up and saying like, oh yeah, that was real. People are starting to change the way they think and change the way they view the world. And that is an individual and a collective aspect to it, which is very exciting.
Agreed. I think that is a big thing. And I think one of the main things too, when people look into the Hollywood or business in general, you know, there's that thing of like quid pro quo, things like that occur. And one of the main things we would hear about when it came to the industry is a lot of blackmail. And I'm curious as to what you know about that and how much that happens or occurs with some maybe prominent actors, actresses, filmmakers, producers, even upcoming people that want to get into the industry. How much of this actually occurs in that industry?
I would say that it is wildly prevalent and happens regularly. I think in the last handful of years, there's probably been a slapping of the hands in that business from a public image standpoint, just with all the damn movements that happen every day with a different culture group. But at the end of the day, I would say that is in any form of our society, whether it's business or entertainment, it's very common. And it looks different than what people think. Not everyone's getting honeypotted into pedophilia. that is a real thing, and that is common as well. But it's also, I mean, I was listening to, I know DMX was on this podcast. I can't remember this other rap artist's name, and they were relevant in the 90s and early 2000s. And either way, he is on the radio talking about how these record labels will get these up and coming stars just shit-faced, on drugs, blackout, and then they will pay people to do things with them that are all illegal, and they film every bit of it. And then when you go to sign your record deal and you see that you're getting fucked and you want to back out, they'll say, hey, why don't we play that video real quick? And now these guys are sitting here thinking, wait, what the hell just happened? Not only are they taken aback for a second, but now real fear sets in from a place of power, a place of now trauma. And so you got a lot of people trapped in this business. Not everyone sold their soul, but some people can't get out of what they bought into. But I would say that it is everywhere. I personally, and we won't have to start it now, I don't know if I was in necessarily a honeypot blackmail situation, but it was definitely a perverted situation when it comes to my manager that was out there. And so again, if you think about it, not to segue too much, but if you go back to what happened in the garden and the seed that was implanted in Eve through the serpent, and now their shame, now their eyes are unveiled, this whole world, sex is perpetuated on people in every single aspect of our life, because it's relevant, because there's power in it, because there is something celestial about it, and it was stolen from us and it was taken from us. But this goes all the way into, into Hollywood, and even what they're doing now with children, like we see with Balenciaga, like we see with our children's programming. Again, everything is inverted. Good is bad, left is right, black is white. And so people need to remember, again, how deep this really goes, that it's not just there's some bad people in the world. No, this is layered in our actual history.
First of all, I hope it's not too personal, but I know you recently became a father. So congratulations.
I did. On that. Thank you so much.
I know we're talking about the whole Balenciaga thing. I'm a mother too. I'm currently pregnant with my third. And
congrats.
Thank you. I feel like seeing this hits you a little bit different being a parent. It's a little bit more invigorating. It puts a little bit more of a fight in you. You being a father now, how has this motivated you to fight against all this? Because I feel like back before we were parents, it was easier to kind of turn a blind eye to this. Sure. You know? So
yeah, no, I'm with you on that 100%. And I don't know exactly how to explain the emotion behind it, but I'm pretty sure if you're a parent, you can relate. I've studied trafficking for a hot minute. The minute I found out it was a real thing, and it wasn't just like like how people smuggle drugs, because I don't view that the same. This was an American Gangster. I started to realize, like, oh shit, this is a literal network that exists around the world that is solely based on the harvesting and growing of human beings as crops. So I knew it, but I didn't feel it until I became a dad. And I can give you an example of what I mean by feel it is I get on the dark web and the alternative internet that does exist in the world to learn things, not to do anything illegal or corrupt or perverted, but that's where you can find real information. And I saw something recently of traffickers in China and how they were being stopped by the townspeople, but they had apparently loaded up tens of, 20s of children less than the age of 3, and they were opening up all these ice chests, and it was just frozen babies. And it hit home of like, this is so deep and so evil, and it has to be so powerful with the things that I've read about what all entails in these processes, but now it just makes me angry. I hear my son cry now when he's upset because he's hungry, and it bothers me. And you get that. It doesn't bother you to the sense of like, you know, freaking out, having tears, but there is an instinct there. And to think what's actually taking place. If y'all want a good example of how Hollywood uses this to throw it in your face, two things. If you want to go see an example, most recently that I saw that I thought was like, this is so spot on, is American Horror Story season 10, the first half of that season. Go watch it. Watch the whole thing. There's going to be moments that make you cringe and you say, wait, what? I also find it interesting that Macaulay Culkin's in this season. And if you don't know the story of Macaulay Culkin, here's the unfortunate thing. A lot of these people really never can get away. Dave Chappelle, Macaulay Culkin, Martin Lawrence. I could keep going and keep going. Remind me of Isaac Cappy, by the way. But there's an interview with Macaulay Culkin, and he did it in France, and he talks about what he saw and experienced on the set of Home Alone 2, and that's why he left show business. And it goes hand in hand with go look up anything and everything to do with red slippers and red shoes, and its relation to pedophilia. It's directly connected to the Podesta brothers. It's connected to the Podesta art, which goes back to an ancient Baal worship and practice of the mutilation of children. This is where the art comes from, and these people have it hanging on their wall. So again, all of this is connected. All of this is relevant. I don't want to go on a tangent.
No, you're fine. I know exactly what you're talking about. And instead of us talking about it, I think people should go look it up for themselves, because I always say that, you know, you can lay the groundwork and say, look here, but people won't believe it until they actually start going down that road to see all the stuff that's unveiled for them. One thing I want you to do, if you're, number one, comfortable with it, and number two, if you feel free of sharing.
Sure.
Because you've been in that environment, if you want to go over some of the stories personally that you dealt with or experienced being in maybe some of the rooms or some of the meetings or environments with some of these people who own the music industry, movie industry, producers, filmmakers, all this, of some things that you've personally seen that you feel like sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell y'all how I really started to dive deep into what the hell's really going on. To give a little bit of context, and maybe we can talk about this on another day, but between the time frames of 2010 and 2013, my life changed significantly. And I performed an exorcism in 2010 that changed my life. And it's not what you think. This wasn't in a church. This had nothing to do with anything related to religion. I've got 5 firsthand credible references for people that can verify what took place. It was everything that Hollywood talks about. I say that to let you know that I had really started to dive deep into truth and what that was and what that looked like and what I did not know about my own life, myself, and the world at large. And when I had got to Hollywood, I was aware of some of these things, not to the scale that I am now, but I knew that there was some red flags and some things to watch for. And so I'd already knew that. But when I ended up moving to Austin, Texas, before I ever lived in LA, then New York, and when I moved to LA, I very much remember, like I said, the atmosphere, the culture, the air that was there. But I went there on a whim. Before I moved there, my agent at the time sent me to a cattle call called IMTA. She said, "You got to go. You got to go. We'll set you up. We'll get you in. We'll take care of X, Y, and Z. Just get there." And so I was like, you know what? It's 5 days. Who cares? It's Los Angeles. Let's go hang out. Let's go party. This should be fun. And I learned very quickly what this was. And now in hindsight, the things that I've connected are very daunting. But being there, I realized that it really was a cattle call, because this is where they can truly find talented people that are stupid and they can easily take advantage of, easily put in a position to where they're no longer in control of their lives or careers. And I did it, and I knocked it out of the park. I got Actor of the Year runner-up. The guy who won was like 72 years old. It was actually kind of phenomenal. He was a superstar. And there were some people that most would know, at least in movies. They'd see their face, they'd know their name. Two people came out of there with me. Well, I left there, and I had like 6 managers and then X amount of agents that wanted to figure something out and sign something. And I ended up choosing this old man who at the time felt very much like my old high school basketball coach. He was from a different time, a different era, and he was no bullshit. He had a New York accent. There was something about him that I was easily related to, and I think that's what drew me to him, and the things that he wanted to set me up with. So I did this, and I went back home to Tennessee, and within 1 month, bags were packed in my car, and I'm headed to Los Angeles. I get settled. He comes and sees some of my shows at the UCB. I had actually, through IMTA, got like a scholarship to one of the theaters in Santa Monica, and so I was doing that. So I was getting out there. I was doing auditions. Well, finally, he brings me to his house in Burbank. And again, if you're in this industry, you would know who this was. You know who his management company was and who he was. But he wasn't, he wasn't a guy that could get a studio to make a decision, but he was someone of relevance. And I remember being out there, and you got to imagine, I'm 23 years old, if I'm not mistaken, young buck, idealistic, idiot. And we're sitting there, and it is cool. I mean, think about it. They've got a spread. It's a pool in the back of a neighborhood in Burbank. Like, this is this guy's office. I'm down. And so we're sitting there, and he's talking. He's like, Chris, look, he's flattering me. He's encouraging me. He's letting me know some weak spots. And then finally he's like, look, we got 2 roles for you right now. Both of them were legit networks. And he's like, it's not a huge part, but it's something that will, like, that's your in. He said, but we want you to be gay. And so I'm sitting here thinking, okay, I don't care to play that type of character. Those things don't bother me. This is part of acting. And he's like, no, we need you, if this is the route you're going to take, we need you to be gay. And I'm sitting here thinking, what? Like, imagine.
So wait, I'm sorry. So let me clarify.
Yeah.
Not your part, you.
Yes. Think inversion, duality, left is right, up is down, everything's fake. And so I'm sitting here, at first I'm sitting here wildly confused. Again, I'm young. I come from a religious background, tried to leave it. Now here I'm sitting questioning what this guy's asking of me, because it didn't make sense, because I wasn't, I'm heterosexual. And so it was one of those moments where I didn't know how to respond. And then he starts to go into detail, mind you, while he's touching himself. Now he had started to get a little bit freer. And so now I'm even more confused at what the hell's going on. But he's like, look, we do this all the time. And he named names. He's like, this person is not gay, or this person's not straight. He's like, these people do this all the time. It's just part of it. He's like, we'll set you up with somebody to take photos and do X, Y, and Z, and it'll go out into the ether, and it'll be good stories and good PR. He's like, and then just in your private life, go about and do whatever you want to do. And I'm sitting there thinking, what the hell is going on? And I left there kind of scared at the audacity of an individual, one, being a pervert in front of me, and then 2, just the reality of how that world worked. And so I left there, and he came to one more of my shows before I ever made a decision, and then I dropped him. And that's when I knew I was not going to fit in that town. And surprising enough, I'd actually been going, funny story, this is how the world works. This is how I think God works. This is where the good is. This is where there's still hope. There's still a lot of great souls out there. Think about the position I'm in. I just caught a very big break. A lot of people would have, figured a way out to make that work and not completely sell out or sell their soul. But I remember where I lived on North Vista. If you're familiar with LA, Plummer Park, I'd walk down Santa Monica every day, and I'd go to Whole Foods and get a juice. On my way every day, I kept seeing this weird clothing store, and it was kind of find out like the highest fashion, highest style type clothes, but it was a thrift store for homeless people. And so kind of find out this individual had started, her family was worth a lot, and she was a nobody that was a somebody. And she was Jewish. And so we had a lot in common when it comes to just her background and her culture and her understanding of her belief in God and her place in the world. So we always had really in-depth conversations about the world. And I'll never forget her encouragement about this event, and that she was in that city to keep people like me from being overtaken by it. And she said, that's why I'm still here. And that's why I'm selling these $2,000 Balenciaga clothes for $1 so that these homeless people can have clothes. And I thought that was hilarious, kind of sticking it to the man. But it was moments like that and people like that I can look back on and be very grateful for, that were kind enough and genuine enough and real enough to say, hey, this place isn't for you. And that's where I ended up leaving LA, and I came back to my hometown and came up with an idea for a TV show, and it just opened all these different doors to a different side of entertainment that I wasn't very privy to or familiar with, which was the back end of how shit actually gets made. And you want to talk about some crooked, you think Wall Street's bad, it's all the same shit. Nothing in Hollywood gets done without people giving up something. And so I spent the better part of almost 5 straight years getting into some of the biggest rooms I could have ever imagined, talking to people that could have changed my life in a moment. And every time that I was about to get my deal, something in the world would happen. I kid you not. Something would have taken place and the deal would die. I find that very significant because that lets me know whatever's on the other side of this next stage in life for people like myself and y'all and others out there listening that feel maybe out of place, that feel that maybe they haven't found that community, that tribe, or their calling or their purpose. And I promise you this, what's coming for the whole lot of us is we're going to take our seat in life and keep pressing in, keep digging in. Don't quit on yourself now. So I say all that because we're at that tipping point, and these stories are reminding me. You're hearing something every day now in politics, media, big tech, Hollywood. Someone is doing something evil, not corrupt, not bad, evil. And I think the pin's about to drop in some form or fashion. Think about it. How much more do we need as humans, as citizens, as contributors of this collective, to where we just say enough is enough? We've got Epstein, we've got Balenciaga, we've got Wayfair, we've got Weinstein, we've got the Anthony Weiner laptop. At what point are people going to say, you know what, this world's fucked, we should really do something about it? I'm not sure what that's going to take, but I feel like we're this close to having some things come out to where people are going to finally have enough.
I think this takes us right back to basically the whole conversation we were having, from television, how they manipulate, how they put the spell on you. to how evil is good, good is evil, because you see that happening. There's so much there for people to wake up to, but yet it's so hard for them to see it. Um, it's just so crazy because you see, you see Balenciaga, you see Epstein, you see all these things, and I think it's going to be the parents that are waking up with the drag shows, with the Christmas shows, with the in your schools. Like, what was it in Chicago in a private school that dean was showing dildos and butt plugs to 14-year-olds, and the school says they supported him. You know, so I think, and people are still making excuses for this. You know, so yeah, I feel like we're on the precipice, but you have these people that have so much control, like the people, like you said, in television, in music, like all these people who control society, who are telling everyone that that is not what it is, that is actually what is correct, and that we are in the wrong.
That's pretty normal. I mean, think about it. People have been bastardized and thrown into the freaking cancel culture jails for the dumbest things. But again, those tides have changed. I remember in 2020, because of the information and the people that I'd started to get around, I started to realize there's some deep conspiratorial aspects of what's happening in the world that's very, very real, and behind the scenes, stuff's moving quick. And I remember learning and reading about what's coming, and that this is going to get so bad and so ridiculous that it's almost going to look like it was made up, and we're starting to see it. I don't know if y'all have seen how ridiculous some of the articles, they deep faked Joe Biden, and they deep faked him hard. The dude didn't blink for 3 minutes. I mean, they're literally making this stuff up now. They're throwing it in our face. And I remember it saying the narratives will shift. And I think we're in that moment of time that we're going to look back on and be grateful that we stood our ground, grateful that we stayed true to ourselves, grateful that we believed in something bigger than ourselves, because we're this close. I can feel it in my bones. And what I want people to understand and hear is how fast has the last 3 years gone, the last almost 7 years. Guys, Donald Trump got elected almost 7 years ago. That's how fast things are moving. That's by design. And so when I say we're this close, put that shit in your pocket for later and realize that this is going to be wave after wave after wave until two outcomes take place. The world is on the precipice of actually burning and intervention takes place. Or we collectively say, we're done. Y'all go fuck yourselves. And so right now, I think that we are in a very unique place in time to where the human soul and our collective efforts are being tested. And I think people are starting to see that. People like me, who have always been risk takers and loud in moments, unafraid to be vocal, I'm starting to get the real sense that there's a lot of us that are no longer fearful of what we used to think were consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a very powerful thing, but it's also very dangerous. And both of those excite me. So we're in a shift, and we're in a very unique moment of time, and people should cherish it. Because it gets grueling sometimes. You got to ask yourself, are you crazy? You got to ask yourself, what's this all for? What's this worth? And you've got to go back to your pillars, your core values as a human and as a believer, and recognize that this is, as cliche as it sounds, bigger than us. And there's a lot of hurting people, and that's the one thing that I'm starting to really resonate with now that I'm a father. I'm getting older. I'm going through an ego death as we speak. I'm trying to really build a life that has purpose and responsibility and accountability. These things really hit home that whenever the case is, like, I'll be dead at some point, and I will be forgotten quickly, like everyone is. But I believe that what I'm doing right now will be something that impacts generations. And if I can be someone that does that, hell yeah, let's do it. Whatever that takes, I'm all in. Because I look at my son and I see what could be. And it doesn't scare me in the sense of fear of danger, what could happen to him, but more so in the sense of there's going to be a loss of his humanness that's stolen from him and everyone else. And so I think we forget that sometimes, that the world's about to find out, humans are about to find out actually how unique and special we really are. I mean, if you think about it, from the time you enter Earth, every single bit of your life is trying to be controlled. From what they put in your body to how they stamp and give you a serial number, the list goes on. And so I'm very excited, again, about what's on the other side of this, because I believe that people are going to wake up and realize, holy crap, that I am uniquely made, that I am designed, that I have purpose, that I am eternal, that I am celestial. There's something unique about that. I think we've lost it in this system, and this system is breaking apart quickly, and that excites me. It's going to look very, very scary to most. It'll look bad, but that just means that it's about to get really good.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I just ranted there.
No, I love it.
A lot of things you said reminded me just about myself and why I'm doing what I'm doing. Is one of the reasons why I created this platform. It's like we said in the beginning, is because there's people who have stories that probably will never be able to get on big platforms or something like that to either vent or let the story be known. And so it's almost the same thing for you. There's probably a lot of people who have no idea who you are, have no idea what you went through, but you went through all of this, and by you telling your story, it may resonate with a lot of people. There may be a lot of people who are thinking about getting in that industry, whether it's music industry, movie industry, whatever, but they're going to be around these types of people, and they don't know the severity of those situations because they're clueless as to what is actually operating everything behind the scenes. One of those things I think that's very important is, of course, who is doing this and what their motives are. I mean, there's obviously good and evil, but everything is energy. There's people that use energy for good. There's people that use energy for bad. It's almost like, it reminds me of Star Wars, right? Like, there's the Force. There's just the Force. And then you have the ones who use the Force for good, and you have the ones who use the Force for bad. And so we have these people with this knowledge, with this information, and like how you said before, these bloodlines, that they're using all this knowledge and information for bad, for evil, period. And so how all this stuff affects every single aspect of our lives is so severe in terms of the food, the air we breathe, the things we watch, the music we listen to, that we're being attacked on so many fronts. So what would you tell people who kind of have this knowledge already, but how have you kind of gotten away from all of that?
Well, gotten away from what exactly?
Well, I guess technically you don't really always get away, but as much as you possibly can to kind of weave out all the negativity that's going on around us. I mean, nonstop. How you mentioned the articles are nonstop. It's every day you're being bombarded with this negative news and all that. So how have you kind of gotten yourself away from all of that as much as possible?
Everybody's different when it comes to how they process life, good, bad, and indifferent. And from myself, I know that my core beliefs, they don't waver. And in that being what they are, there's just certain aspects of this that are irrelevant to me. They're not that important. And so in viewing life through that lens of recognizing that not all of this should and can be affecting me negatively, just allows me to keep going. There are some things that concern me that I take precaution with, that I'm aware of, because one, it's just instinct. And then two, there is a sense of I really want to be what's on the other side of this. I want to be around for it. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't scare me. I'm built for it. And so I think people really just need to audit themselves right now. They need to audit themselves in life in general. There's been too many distractions in the world for the last 3 years, keeping people occupied in their time and their emotions, in their viewpoints towards situations, people. All of this, like you said earlier, is energy. All of this is affecting the whole, when in reality, there is some really, really corrupt, evil shit taking place behind the scenes, and we're being manipulated. And so people really need to take a step back and realize, like, hey, where am I right now in all of this? And I would pat someone on the back if they said, I'm consciously choosing to just not care about anything, because those people exist. Ignorance is bliss. They don't want to know, and when shit hits the fan, they want out of Dodge. That's fine. Those people are probably going to have a very tough time relearning and unlearning certain things that are coming. That's okay. And then there's some people that I think they're lost forever. I think that there's going to be these shifts and waves of not just disclosure, but what's happening with humanity right now. I don't know what that looks like necessarily, from being left behind, and they're never gonna be able to pull the veil back. I don't know what that looks like for them, but I know it's gonna happen. And so, yeah, I just think people need to dig deep, and one place to always go back to center in life, okay? Whether it's you're dealing with fear or anxiety, or you're depressed, when you contribute and give and help other people, it is the fastest and truest form of putting yourself back in alignment, because, again, this isn't necessarily about us. And so that's my biggest encouragement to people. Start doing things for others that you otherwise wouldn't before. I promise you, kindness is going to go a long way during this, and helping people is, that's why we're here. So, yeah, to get back to center, go help somebody who can't help themselves, man.
I would like to ask Chris a couple questions, personal questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, more than anything, give you a little moment to kind of talk a little bit about what you're doing behind the scenes. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Nexus Affiliates, what it is, and
Sure.
or how people can watch Mac and Drew, or how anyone can just follow you or support you in any way.
Sure. So I, as an entrepreneur, have had a great skill set of being able to build brands and create things from the ground up. That is where programs and softwares like Nexus Affiliates comes in. It's actually the brainchild of my dad, who is a professional network marketer. And I ended up taking a book that he wrote, and we created an entire training platform for that niche and for that industry. And so we're actually in the works right now with a company to license it and work with them, which is very exciting. It's been a labor of love and hate all at the same time. So if you are in the industry of network marketing, check us out, DM me, head to the website, it's nexusaffiliates.com. When it comes to Mac and Drew, that project is one of the greatest teachers I've ever had in life. It has been something that will live with me for the rest of time. And I really hope I get to tell my grandkids about how your old Papaw made this thing happen someday. Because I got the idea, for people who really want to know how this idea came about. It's had multiple iterations and incredible people involved with it. It was 3 a.m. This is back when I drank. I'm almost 3 years sober, mind you. 17 days and 3 years sober. So for anybody out there who's thinking about not drinking, I promise you, even if you're not an alcoholic or you struggle with it, just don't drink for 30 days and then come back and tell me how you feel. It does wonders. Either way, I'm drunk chain smoking cigarettes, and it's 3 a.m. I kid you not, that's how most things happen to me. Just the whole thing there. Just knew what it was. I remember texting one of my buddies at the time, why at 3 a.m, I don't know. I told him, hey man, I figured this out. I ended up shooting a pilot. It was garbage, very well professionally made, but the story was just weak. Either way, created that pilot, made a sizzle out of it, and then built some decks around it and pitched it using some methods that people had taught me and some friends that knew what they had done before in the past that had worked for them. And long story short, one element of the show that I was doing was reaching out to families that had children with Down syndrome, and I was getting their stories. They were sending me their stories via letter or tape because I was going to put it a part of this pitch deck. And I ended up meeting this writer from in Boston, and her daughter had Down syndrome. And then come to find out she was a writer. List goes on. We ended up talking about potentially pursuing this together, and I ended up going to Boston, and this lady just ripped this thing apart. It was hilarious. The young, egotistical me probably didn't like all of it, but that was some of the most fun I've ever had with a human being. We ripped this show apart. We turned it into a monster, and then the next thing you know, just wide open blue ocean of opportunities, pitch meetings, producers interested, turning it into X, Y, and Z. And it ended up with her being about a 4-year stint of really, really pushing this show. I'm talking from Sony to Amazon to Netflix to some of the biggest names in Hollywood. And it just never found a home. Over time, we had multiple deals on the table, and none of them turned into what either or any of us would have hoped. And I've still got it in my back pocket. So right now, I've written 5 children's books based off my life with Andrew, and we're turning them into a kid's superhero series. And so I'll see how that goes, while at the same time, we're tentatively slated to shoot a social media docu-series that's kind of like a Robin Big that follows us.
So
the scripted part of this.
Real quick.
Go ahead.
Andrew is your best friend, right?
Yes, he is. I'm so sorry. I totally skipped over that.
I never thought that I would say, I'm so happy someone is making a children's book that's for children. Because today, that is very difficult to find. Whether it's the cartoons, whether it's the books, whether it's the toys, a lot of things just are no longer for children. So I definitely commend you for actually doing something that will give children a childhood.
And I love that. Is Andrew's going to be the hero?
Oh, well, he is. I mean, he's always the hero in everything.
So for the ones that don't know, Andrew has Down syndrome, right?
He does. Andrew is my best friend. He's one of my oldest friends, and we have lived so much life together. I ended up getting a wild idea, being in entertainment, to make a TV show based on our lives. Because at the end of the day, Andrew, in that season of my life, is the reason I'm alive. He's my saving grace. If it wasn't for him, I don't know where I'd be right now. And so he holds a very near and dear place to me. And I've always just, in an ideal world, if I could wake up and do anything on most days, just being around him would be a part of that. And hopefully us doing something creative together, because the kid's a riot. He's so funny, and he is highly intelligent, and he's probably one of the greatest teachers I've ever had in life when it comes to the intangibles, the things that our souls need. And that's one thing that I'm excited about with this book is I wrote it with the context that every episode was going to have a teaching and teachable moments in them about inclusion, being human, being helpful, being kind. And so looking at our differences in the most positive of lights. I don't always find the political correctness aspect of life to be completely accurate. I get that there's people's feelings, lives, emotions, hardships involved. And so there was this movement within the Down syndrome and disability community that was handy capable. And I get it. I love it. I think it's actually the way that we should view that entire world. Granted, there's always, the exceptions to where we need to cater to that. But in this book, the core message of that is that at the end of the day, you are a fully capable human being to do and be whatever you want in life, and nothing can stop you. And so that's the message that these books are about. So I got 5 of them, and I'm working on the next 5. So they're going to be, here's the premise. Okay, I'll give you the premise of these books. Mac and Drew, okay, it's called The Adventures of Mac and Drew. They end up finding themselves in their family restaurant's freezer, and the door accidentally opens up into a portal. And they end up going on all these adventures through their restaurant freezer door and having all of these insane life lessons and meeting all these crazy cast of characters. So it's a lot of fun.
I love that. And I love that that is actually a type of inclusion that we really do need in society instead of what is being pushed.
Well, I'll tell you right now, the best part about that, like you just said, the inclusion of it, is it's not about color. That's all they seem to go off of now.
No.
So it has nothing to do with that. It's just about the soul. It's about the person, about the being. That's the most important part. So I love that myself. I think that's amazing.
Thank you. We'll see. We're working on the stop motion animation for it as well. We're hoping to turn it into a. We'll test it to see as a kids series if it translates with the limited resources we have as animation and editors. So we'll see.
I just want to say thank you, Chris, for coming on. You actually motivated me. You renewed my motivation in this, talking about how we all have our claims. You're so right. We can all do our own part in different ways, and what you're doing is so amazing. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Very kind.
I commend you for doing what you're doing. You made this a really good episode, and I know everybody really enjoyed it because when people aren't too busy typing, that means they're listening. So for everybody who's watching, thank you guys for joining us for tonight.
Everybody take heart. The world's weird. It's going to get stranger, and buckle up. It's nothing but good on the other side. So
well, thank you. Good night, you guys.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good one.